Let's end this silly movement once and for all.
Privyet Moja Druzia. I'm Comrade Vadim, and you're watching Ranking Every Assassin's Marksmanship. Today we're going to be looking into one of the most shocking assassinations in US history. The assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. by James Earl Ray. We'll walk through the events leading up to this tragic day, analyze the shot that Ray took and the weapon of choice, and then we'll head out to the range to recreate this shot and see just how good of a marksman Ray really was. Martin Luther King Jr., as many of you will know, was the most influential leader in the American Civil Rights Movement. His campaign for equal rights began in 1955 and continued throughout the 1960s. By 1968, King had become the movement's most powerful voice, using nonviolence resistance, powerful oratory, and relentless courage to fight for voting rights, desegregation, and racial equality. But the country was deeply divided. The Vietnam War raged on, and race riots had shaken major cities, and King's growing criticism of both economic inequality and the war made him a target, not just for segregationists, but for opponents across the political spectrum. In early April of 1968, King traveled to Memphis, Tennessee to support an ongoing strike of black sanitation workers. And this wasn't his first appearance at the strike. And to spread the message for this, on April 3rd, King delivered his famous "I've been to the mountaintop" speech. Unbeknownst to him, or the rest of the world for that matter, James Earl Ray, a career criminal and fugitive, was also in Memphis. Ray had spent his entire life in and out of prison on charges ranging from armed robbery to fraud. After escaping the Missouri State Penitentiary in April of 1967, Ray had become increasingly obsessed with politics and race. He fixated on King and was furious at his increasing influence and anti-war stance. When King arrived in Memphis, Ray was already there, armed and ready to act. It's April 4th, 1968. The time is 6:01 p.m. and we're at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee. Martin Luther King Jr. is standing on the second floor balcony, casually speaking to colleagues below. Below him in the parking lot are Jesse Jackson and other members of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Across the street, tucked into a small rented room in a rundown boarding house, is James Earl Ray, an escaped convict armed with a bolt-action Remington 760 Game Master chambered in .30-06. He's removed a screen from the bathroom window and props his rifle up on the sill. From his cramped vantage point, 207 feet away from King, Ray aimed through the partially open window while balancing on the edges of a bathtub. He fired a single round, striking King in the jaw, shattering his face, and severing his spinal cord before embedding into his shoulder. King collapsed instantly. Chaos erupts. Witnesses begin pointing across the street to the boarding house, friends rush to King's side, and reporters capture every moment with their cameras. The shot had come from across the street, that much was clear, but Ray was already gone. He fled the scene, leaving behind his rifle and a pair of binoculars wrapped in his belongings. Just as quickly as he revealed himself, he vanished. King was rushed to St. Joseph's Hospital, but was pronounced dead at 7:05 p.m. He was only 39 years old. Although there was plenty of evidence leading back to Ray, what shocked the world was he was nowhere to be found. The assassination triggered a wave of unrest across the United States. Hundreds of cities erupted into riots, tens of thousands of people mourned in the streets, and the FBI launched an international manhunt. Ray would eventually be captured 2 months later in London's Heathrow Airport. Later it was found that he initially drove to Atlanta, caught a flight up to Canada, hid there for about a month, briefly traveled to Portugal, and then traveled up to London, where he intended to become a mercenary in Africa, but was arrested while attempting to fly to Brussels. All in all, he was on the run for 66 days. Ray maintained for the rest of his life that he was just a pawn in a larger conspiracy, and many people still believe him, citing potential involvement by the FBI, organized crime, or any other entity that may be opposed to King's mission. One thing remains certain: Martin Luther King Jr.'s death marked an end of an era and solidified his place as one of the most powerful voices for peace and equality. Alright, now let's talk about the gun that Ray used, and then we'll talk about the finer details of the shot. That way we can better recreate it here shortly. Ray used the Remington Model 760 Game Master, chambered in .30-06. Sadly, I don't have one of these Game Masters, but I do have a Remington Model 760 that's fairly close, and we can talk about the differences of it, but this will be pretty good for visual comparisons. If you're not familiar with the Game Master, it's actually a really cool rifle. Unlike the 700 I have here, the Game Master is a bolt-action rifle, which I just think is really neat. To add on to that, it came with a magazine. From the factory, it was a 4-round mag, but other people made larger capacity magazines as well. Now, Ray's rifle had a Redfield 2-to-7 times scope. On mine, I have a 2-to-8 times scope, so that gives us the same capability as he had. And from 207 feet away, any magnification helps. But as we just heard, Ray was positioned in a bathroom on the second floor of a boarding house across the street from the Lorraine Motel. He had to stand up on the bathtub and balance on it to get his rifle through the tiny little window in the bathroom. As he aimed through it, he saw King 207 feet away, standing on the balcony across the street, talking to people down below him. Now, it's important to note that when King was standing on this balcony and talking to those people below him, he was very still. So for all intents and purposes, Ray was shooting at a completely static target. And with that, he aimed through his rifle scope, lined up his shot, and hit King right in the jaw, causing a mortal wound. So now that we know how Ray did it and what Ray did it with, let's head out to the range to recreate the shot and find out just how good of a marksman James Earl Ray really is. The fight.
Alright, welcome to the range where we're going to work to recreate this assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. by James Earl Ray. Not James Earl Jones. Don't get him confused. As we just heard, Martin Luther King Jr. was standing on the balcony of the motel, and across the street was James Earl Ray, up on the second-story window of a boarding house, standing on a bathtub through the tiny window. He fired off a single round, striking Martin Luther King Jr. in the right jaw, going through his cheek and then down into his shoulder, fatally wounding him. So let's go grab the gun, get warmed up, and then set up this recreation. So James Earl Ray used a .30-06 Remington Game Master. I don't have a Game Master, but I do have a Remington 700 chambered in .270, so that will be close enough for our purposes of this recreation. So let's go warm up with this rifle. That way we are fully prepared to take this 207-foot shot. So let's go ahead and warm up. I don't have a long range, so we're just gonna fire into the dirt like the good old days. All right, we are 207 feet away from the target. Let's load up, give it a try. Let's end this silly movement once and for all. All right, so here we are. We had one shot from the short, which landed right there, but let's focus on this one. That is from the shot we just took. So right in the side of the head, 207 feet, fairly good. I'm pretty happy with that. So let's go up, take 2 more shots, and see if we can recreate that or possibly improve, or maybe we can't even hit it again and we just got lucky. Let's go figure it out. All right, let's give it another try here. That felt good. All right, that one was almost perfectly lore accurate. So this was the one from attempt 1. There's attempt 2 right in the cheek. Do we have an exit wound? No. So the angle wasn't quite right to go through his other cheek and down into his shoulder. Looks like James Earl Ray would have been positioned a little bit higher, probably a little bit more perpendicular, but that's all right. This is a really good attempt. Well, let's go give it one more and see if anything changes. All right, one last attempt here. Let's see if anything changes. You know, this is also accurate because I'm very uncomfortable right here. And James Earl Ray was probably really uncomfortable balancing on that bathtub. Oh, I may have pulled it. May have pulled it. All right, so coming up and looking at the target, it's hard to tell if possibly I pulled the shot a little bit to the left I feel like it landed somewhere about right there, so in real life, probably could have grazed him, maybe nicked his right ear. Sounds familiar. But it's possible, we'll have to review the footage, that is actually 2 holes in 1. We'll review the footage and see what the fraying exactly looked like. If I hit it, we celebrate. But if I didn't, I've brought shame to my family. So based on everything we've seen, 207 feet is a very respectable distance. 1 shot through the cheek, into the shoulder. Very good shot placement. It was obviously fatal for Martin Luther King Jr. However, it isn't the longest shot with such a large rifle like the 30-06 or like the 270 in the recreation. You can see I got 3, possibly 4 of those shots, and even if I did miss that one, I believe I was more right here, which would have still been a very fatal shot. So, based on everything we've seen today, I'm going to give James Earl Ray a very respectable marksmanship assessment and put him in the B category. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this episode of Ranking Every Assassin's Marksmanship, make sure to check out the playlist on my channel for the other episodes, both shorts and the long-form videos. Make sure to follow my Instagram and my X account, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment down below. Tell me, do you think Ray was acting alone, or was he part of a larger conspiracy? Was it the FBI? Was it organized crime? Or was it another party? Well, anyway, until next time, do Svidaniya.